there's not enough of it. We go through our lives just expecting for everything to come easier than it really does. We do what's expected of us instead of what we really yearn for. And the biggest problem with that is we're wasting our time trying to work up the courage to do something that we're going to either end up doing later for ourselves, or we just let that opportunity go and we lose the things that we cherish most about it. In the quote, "Waiting for tomorrow, raised up today" by Charlie Chan, I believe this to be true. Many people put off doing things that they feel are something that they can do tomorrow or the next year or the next week, like going to school or even starting a relationship with somebody. There is a fear of failure in the possibility of, what if I don't do it right? Or what if I can't be good enough? Because you don't want to let yourself down, and you don't want that opportunity to be missed. But what people don't realize is it's a trial and error that has to be complete or continued until you get it right. It's not something that you try once and then you can achieve all the greatness that you were hoping for. It doesn't happen that way. It's something that you have to keep on working at and striving towards. After high school, I was pretty much lost and I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I felt like I had a pretty good handle on things. I was so proud of myself because I was able to get my own job. I enrolled in school and I had just gotten my license. I was so proud of myself. And then my mom got an injury. And I decided, you know what, that's my mom, I want to take care of her. I'll put all this stuff on hold so that I can take care of her. And it took her 3 years to recover. All this time, I wasn't doing anything with my life, and I had become so absorbed in that I just stunted my growth. I didn't go to work because I had to stay home. I had to take care of her every need. I needed to make sure that she got fed, that she was cleaned up afterwards, that she got exercise. And I was so embarrassed at the fact that I wasn't doing anything for myself, and all my friends were going to school and even finishing, that I completely closed myself off from the entire world, and I just became a shut-in. And I was so embarrassed by that I didn't want to go forward. And then one day, my friend came up to me out of the blue when I was shopping, and she told me, "Oh, I went to Europe, and this was my experience. How are you doing?" And I was so ashamed, I couldn't even look at her. Eventually, she started taking me out a little bit more, and I told her what had happened. My mother had recovered by then, but I was so embarrassed about how much I'd fallen behind from everybody that I just stopped doing everything. I didn't even know where to begin, where to pick up. So she offered me the opportunity to go to Europe and to find that spark that I had. And it took me a year to realize everything that I'd already lost. Now, I'm not saying I regret what I did, because I felt what I did was the right thing at the time. But I think if I'd have allowed myself more, things wouldn't have been so much of a struggle now. I learned so much about myself that I felt nothing but pride afterwards. And that's what you've got to do, is you've got to try to be honest with yourself and do the things that you need to do to really pursue what you love. and don't waste it.
All right, well, the opening, you express your point of view, but it does seem like it's taken you a long time, and it's a little awkward getting to that point of view. Once you identify the topic and we kind of know where you're headed, I think you settle down a bit more into the presentation. The subject matter is identified, and we know generally where you're headed, but there isn't really a preview. It's not clear that there's any structure, and as you're speaking, it really often sounds like, well, I'm in this story and I'm just going to go wherever the story takes me next, and then I'm going to follow that one instead of having a plan about what the story's supposed to support. You're just letting the story kind of become the purpose of your talking, and I think that makes it a little bit less focused as a consequence. You do fill the time, but it's not necessarily time as well spent as it could have been if you'd just been pickier about what you talked about. Don't be afraid of using less time. The goal is not automatically to use the full amount of time. It's to make a clear point and make it in an interesting way. So I thought you developed the topic pretty well, but you missed some chances, and like I said, it's not very well organized. The presentation things, though, there are several things that are pretty solid. I think your voice is very effective. There's good variety there. Pacing is a little bit of a problem because sometimes it feels like you're straining to get that next sentence out, and when you listen back, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I know that sometimes you're thinking about the next thing that you're going to say, and that's why that comes up. But that's another reason why you ought to just have, I got a couple of ideas that I'm going to talk about them the best you can, make your point, and then get off the stage. So it doesn't sound like, well, I'm stretching, because that feels as awkward as anything. The gestures, it's interesting. I thought you'd gotten a little bit better in the second half of the presentation. The first half of the presentation, the gestures were all the same thing. You had this hand thing that you were doing repeatedly, and that sort of thing. And then you got into speech a little bit more, and then both hands were a little bit more involved and engaged, and you seemed like you were thinking a little bit more. I still think that sometimes that's where your anxiety is coming out. So you might want to be a little bit more controlled on that. Your face, though, is quite animated. You have excellent eye contact with me, but the rest of the audience, I don't know if they had any idea that you were talking to them. How did you guys feel over there? Did she ever look at you? Because I tell you what, every time I looked up, it was like she's looking right at me the whole time. And I did feel a little special as a consequence, and I thought, there are a whole bunch of other people out there too. They could probably use a little bit more attention. So you want to be careful about that. At the conclusion of the speech, it felt a little bit awkward because I really think that you were just kind of absorbed in the story, the ideas that you were talking about, and you'd kind of forgotten, what was it, the point that I was trying to make at the beginning of the speech, and you realized, well, my time's up, well, don't waste your time, and although that ultimately is the point that you're trying to make, it just doesn't feel like you had planned it. All right, thank you.